Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sal. I'm sales at Altura. It's great to have you all here for the very first Lunch and Learn that we are organizing in London, in the UK. 3 years ago, I joined Altura and we did our first, we call it bid management masterclass in the Netherlands. We had a room that was three times the size of this room, and we had 12 people show up. So when we first planned this event, we set the goal of getting 25 people in the room, and we said if there's at least 12, then we won't cancel the event. So it's safe to say that the turnout is above our expectations. So thank you very much all for being here, and warm welcome. And also on behalf of the rest of the Altura team. And yeah, so today, really, our goal today is to give you all the opportunity to network and to learn from Jeremy. It's been, for us in the Netherlands, a great journey over the last 3 years of building a community of bid managers, which has led to many great connections, led to many great new job opportunities for people in the community mingling together. And I'm sure that over time, we'll be able to build hopefully something similar here. So this is the first of many. Probably some will be less big. I'm going to turn the music off.
Definitely not going to dance. Not today.
Thank goodness.
That's fair. Yeah, and so of course the main reason you are all here is because of our great speaker Jeremy. Jeremy Brim has 25 years experience leading high-performing bid teams. He's now leader of Growth Ignition, doing consulting services, board memberships, and lots of advisory for high-performing bid teams. And he's going to teach us and bring us along today what modern bid teams do different. So thank you, Jeremy, for being here, and a warm welcome on behalf of all of us.
These things go with the calendar. It feels like a good idea. And then the day before you realise, I've still got to talk to you tomorrow. Probably shouldn't have had a few beers with a client last week, but it was for good reasons, probably. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see lots of old friends, some newer friends, and some new friends. So, yeah, we can't really cover this bit. But who's this guy? So, yeah, I've got 25 years of track record in growing B2B, B2G businesses, largely businesses that ultimately have to tender for work. Grew up at Mooshell, the outsourcing business in the noughties, and was really lucky to be the youngest that I had to hang around with a bunch who went on to be really successful, and I could carry their bag and learn from them. And lots of the stuff that's in the talk today goes back to our heritage, really. We won everything we bid for 7 years and scaled quite a significant business. In that time, followed a bunch of those people to E.C. Harris, the world's preeminent quantity surveyors, project managers, at the time, and helped scale and sell that business to Arcadis that some of you compete with. I haven't got any Arcadians here today, have I? Good, so we can tag them off. Because the mothership there is very boring. Anyway, that's partly why I left. And then my last real job was at Mace. We've got loads of Mace people in. Put your hands up if you're a Mace person. Loads of them. I know you not. I didn't need to say anything to you. So yeah, my last real job was at Mace, the people who built the Shard and the London Eye in their Tottenham Stadium, Battersea Power Station era. It was my team that helped put the proposals together for those and win those deals, and learned a great deal. But in March 2018, my dad pulled me to one side and less than politely explained I was killing myself making other people rich again, and I should probably consider my life choices. He liked my wife a lot more than he likes me, and would prefer she stuck around. Because he's an accountant, he recognised that divorces are quite expensive, apparently. And so, hopefully, she has stuck around. But, you know, a bit of a cautionary tale for you bidding broke. I do have type 2 diabetes from those late night pizza parties, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and clients, after exercise. So this has consequences. Look after yourself. And we have lost some friends this year through cancer in their 40s, and so go to the doctors if there's something not right. The bid can wait, please. So look after yourselves. And anyway, so I started Growth Ignition in October 18. We left Mace with the board members' blessing, and I've had a great time wandering around working with the leadership teams and boards and bid teams of a whole range of businesses in the construction sector, because I'm kind of typecast in that, but we've done stuff in outsourcing, professional services, legal, IT, all sorts of stuff. So hopefully that's enough showing off. We do own a platform called the Bid Toolkit. We'll send you an email afterwards with some links and stuff. But that's an online bid process and guide with our training content baked into it in video form and tools to download. So if you've got kids early in their careers, for instance, it's quite an interesting reference point that they can refer to. And we sell enterprise versions of that. We have a number of clients that have their own version of that. There is one at the back, actually, one of my clients who has their own enterprise site that they use as their digital bid process, and then we'll send out a PDF of the deck. It's got all of the stuff that we do. So obviously we do the training game down the bottom in terms of capability development, but as you'll see when we get into the talk, actually that should be middle or end of the journey. Much of my time these days is spent with leadership teams and bid teams focused on their maturity in their approach, which we'll talk about, their target operating model, performance environment. And then that leads to how we develop people in those processes so that we knock it out of the park. So, enough about us, let's get into it. So, what are you lot facing at the moment? What's the world like? It's not a lot of fun, is it? So, there's a bit going on, there's a bit of instability. We've had the sort of onset of Trump and all of that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter which way you vote or how you feel about stuff. Markets have been a bit bumpy. In the UK in particular, we've had elongation of pipeline delays in big infrastructure projects coming to market. I'd say it doesn't really matter which way you vote. The current government are pretty boring, and it appears they're not very good at politics, but they are doing some quite sensible stuff, which you do have to ask why we didn't have it before. Like an industrial strategy as a country that defines what we're going to do as a country, and then hanging off of that, a 10-year infrastructure plan, a defence plan, etc., etc. So actually, the upside is, in amongst all of the noise and populism, we should be entering a golden era combined with the new Procurement Act stuff, where pipeline data is more readily available than it's ever been for UK public sector. Private sector, I'm afraid you've still got to go and talk to people and all that kind of stuff, although there's some research we can do. But as you'll see, market research actually is easier, or should be easier. For us, proposal people, most people here are bid writers, bid managers, heads of bids, etc. We've got a few other grown-ups intermingled too. APMP is a bit of a thing. Things are improving, actually. We've been through a little bit of a valley of death with APMP. So this is the professional body for bid writers, bid managers, people, proposals people, that we should all hold dear, really. But in reality, globally, they only have 7% penetration, we believe. There's about 250,000 people have professional bid terms as their job title in the world, and there's only 14,000 members, 15,000 members or something. So if my maths is right, which isn't guaranteed, that's about 7%. We've had a failed rebrand. They tried to rebrand as the Association of Winning Work or something to broaden their spectrum, and there was a bit of a running battle about that, which is a bit awkward. And then they tried to implement a new BSI standard for bids and proposals, which, if anyone read it, wasn't very good. And said things in it like you can kick bids off by email. No, you cannot. It's a human sport. You need to talk to people, as we'll see in a bit. So, but we've got a new chief exec onboarding at the moment globally. The UK board is now mostly populated with employed people rather than vendors, which I think is a positive step for the person being vendor. So actually, there's some really good things happening, and hopefully we'll see some improvement. But the reason for raising this is that most senior people that I work with in business have never heard of it and don't care. And so that's a problem for us as a community. We need to raise the awareness of our professional body and really drive forward bids and proposals as a discipline and profession for young people, a deliberate thing. And so there's lots of good work, but we should support it. And thank you to volunteers that volunteer as part of APMP. It's important with where we're going. And then, of course, we'll come back to this later, but there's the spectre of AI, which keeps quantum leaping by the looks of things every 3 months. So basically, because basically my business is a training business, I go quiet in school holidays because no one wants to be trained. So I get some time to myself to look at things. So every school holidays, I look at what's going on in AI at the moment. Did it in April. If you look at Copilot, for instance, which most people have access to, in April, if you put into it, how do you approach writing public sector bids in the UK, it came back with a bit of a mishmash and vaguely useful stuff, but not that great. Did it again in August, and it comes back with some stuff that's quite good. So we're constantly, I've been using it to help some clients with from commercial services, construction professional services. Anyone working on that for the moment? Yes, you are. Oh, isn't it? Just been extended, not at all to do with their incompetence. So everybody knows how much I love CCS. I did get thrown out of the business school 2 weeks ago for asking some interesting questions, so I should answer. But anyway, AI is coming over the hill at us. What does it mean for our youngsters early in their career? In particular, we are seeing less graduates and apprentices being employed this year. What does that mean for us in the world of winning work? I'm talking to some friends, heads of bids. Over lunch, we're seeing leaders of businesses misunderstanding the AI opportunity, and so we need to think about that. So, an interesting journey I've been on in the last 2 years now, I think. So I'm on my 19th client in a row, either construction businesses, consultancy businesses, where they make 80% of their margin, their profit, from 20% of their clients, the old Pareto principle. You know something that most people don't know now. Not a single board member that I've had to break that news to knew that. It's been, and these are up to 1 to 1.2 billion turnover business. Probably half of them are over 500 billion turnover. So that's a lot of people's mortgages and rent on their backs in terms of staff. And so that's what's starting. They're making lots of money with their top 5 to 10 clients over here. They're making a bit more money with some rising stars and falling stars over here. And then they have a massive tail that goes off the screen and probably through the wall of lots of one-hit wonders or bitty clients, where if they accounted for their cost of sale effectively, which almost nobody does, they're making a loss. It's the in construction businesses, we've got a few builders here, it's the FE college job. Everyone celebrates winning this 80 million quid college job, but it's with some weirdo one-man band project manager who's absolutely militant. Single stage civic guys, they will basically have you over at every possible instance. But the big deal is that's the one job with that client forever. There's no repeat business. There's no forward order book. You're doing that one project in an environment that probably isn't that hospitable, and your people probably won't enjoy it. So, which brings me to, in the last 6 months, I've done a lot more work on what is the DNA of these clients that are in the top to 20% of clients delivering 80% of the margin, and then what's the DNA of these clients down here. And interestingly, the clients where you make money are the ones that engage you early, that have programs of work. This is on average, because we'll all go and prove me wrong with some FE college job and get loads of money, and everyone will have a great time. So I call the John Barnes effect as an old Liverpool fan. In his last 2 seasons, he was rubbish. We had one good game in 10, so he kept getting in. And he got bankrupt again, didn't he, last week? But anyway, so big programs of work, repeat business. They engage you early. Critically, your people like working with their people and see development in that work. It's not too far from home, and if you're a builder, it's not too far from your supply chain's basis of operation. Whereas I saw an article that was with the FD of Osborne, who went bust last year as a contractor, and towards the end there was the classic, "Oh, we've gone bust because the government don't give us very much money." But earlier in the article, if you'd actually listened to what he said, they went bust because they won 3 jobs that were outside their geography, outside their capabilities, with a different supply chain. The clients were strangers. Basically, it was always going to go wrong because their people aren't compelled, don't enjoy it, it's a stretch, etc., etc. So make of that what you will. As a bid team, for most of us that are in bids and proposals here, you're not going to be able to walk up to your chief exec and go, do the maths, mate, or making this much money for this clients. You might have to use some soft influence to help them discover these facts through a series of meetings, but that has a direct impact on your life in bidding. If you're bidding shit bids down here with strangers, ultimately, if you're writing bids where they don't know the people in the CVs that you're submitting, you're going to have a more difficult life as a bid team, and you'll struggle to attract and recruit people. Your win rate will be awful. Whereas if you can goad your business into trying to be directly awarded or negotiate more and more work with clients through frameworks in the private sector, working with clients on key account plans and the relationship and their forward order book, being entrepreneurial around that, everyone will have a better time. I love it. In bidding, saying this to the room for the bidding people, bidding is actually competitively the last thing you ever want to do. We should do this as sparingly as possible on strategic pursuits and frameworks where we're kind of forced to. We should, it's the utopia, but if you can move from 10% negotiation to 20%, that work is more profitable in good margin for the right reasons, not just ripping people off, and it's really more successful. So, that makes sense. Good. I'm glad it does to someone. So, loads of you have seen this slide before because I've been bottling it about donkeys. So the grey bit in the background, I drew in the boardroom of E.C. Harris in 2008 as the banking crisis unfolded outside. We didn't have a CRM platform or a single pipeline. I'll also remember this. So sitting between Philip Normal, etc. Ranking. And so we didn't have a single pipeline, not even on a spreadsheet. We had 216 partners around the world who all had their own little fiefdoms. And the problem was we thought we had a load of work over here in delivery, but it wasn't. It was here in deal close. So we had a letter saying we were a preferred bidder, but we didn't have a signed contract or our first invoice paid, and that work largely disappeared overnight. We made 80 people out of 500 in London in a couple of weeks. Fairly unpleasant time for anyone who remembers that far back in as grey as me. So we quickly spun up a SharePoint site as a database, which was sort of pre-Teams, and we didn't have the money for a big CRM platform at the time. So just basically a big spreadsheet really online. We got all the partners to crowdsource all of their opportunities here for the first time. We got them to qualify them as to whether they were identified. So we knew it existed, but hadn't spoken to the client about it yet. Position, so we were engaging the client, talking to them, shaping the opportunity, ideally for a negotiation, and then proposal to negotiate or a competitive tender, and then deal close, preferred bidder, and then into delivery. If you're building contractor, that deal close bit, your second stage on a two-stage deal would go on for like 18 months or something. But this, the timeline across the bottom was based on UK public sector regulated industry and stood up and still stands up pretty much for most things in most markets. And the probability was what we actually baked into the pipeline, so the accountants could get a feel for where the revenue was, etc., etc. So that was a useful exercise at the time. What I've realised since, I've built the arrows over the top since, I guess. And so I've realised that high-performing businesses have a business plan, for instance, which you would think is quite a straightforward step, and everyone has one, but they do not. Quite often. So interestingly, about 500 people a month in the UK search on Google for bid writing training, which is cool because I've got a bid writing training business. Someone needs to keep me in these sorts of jumpers I'm always wearing. So that's handy, but when I have to break it to, I probably train about 1,000 people a year in bid writing around the world. And I have to break it to them partway through the course that their ability to write a bid well is only 20% of the problem, really, and you guys know this. In reality, clients know who they want to win that deal largely way before any tender documents ever released. So, if a tender is out, if you don't know the 5 people that are going to read and score that tender, certainly 3 of them well enough that they would vote for you today, you're probably going to lose. You're going to have to, your actual ability to make a big enough difference in the bid stage as a bid team, I'm afraid, is pretty slim. You can, and you'll prove me wrong from time to time. But odds on, when you look at the data, I bet you the deals you win is where you knew the client, you understood the solution risks. The deals you lose is where you didn't. So fundamentally, if the client opens your bid or competitive tender or your proposal, and they have to read the CVs, you're probably going to lose. If they don't know the 3 to 5 top CVs in your bid before you submit the bid, you're in trouble. So basically, we figured out that you need to have a property market research business plan, and we'll unpack that in a minute. But the key building blocks where we've made a difference. So I'm on my 6th client as a business or a business unit where we've doubled their margins in 2 to 3 years by doing some market research, writing a business plan and playbook of targets, and then basically writing 1-page key account plans for their top 5 clients or prospects, and then 1-page capture plans for their top 5 pursuits. And then they just go and smash their numbers to bits. In combination with a bit of cut the tail and stop working with silly little clients. If you can add a client to that top client list or 2 each year that has a pipeline of work that's good to work with, etc., you'll smash your numbers to bits and the bidding game becomes so much easier. Basically, we're into making businesses self-fulfilling prophecies. And what the alarming thing I've realised, I'm a non-exec for a £1.2 billion building contractor at the moment in the UK, and I talked this concept through with their regional MDs a few weeks ago, and it dawned on me they all had slightly blank faces because nobody's ever taught them this stuff. This isn't in a single MBA course you can do. It's not any of my competitors in the bidding space, SP, Bidcraft, or whoever. They do bidding stuff and they might do some capture stuff, but they know nothing about CAM, they don't do strategy, etc., etc. So there's no one else in the world, hopefully, that could tell your leaders about this funnel. There's no one else that has a diagram. So that's a bit scary in terms of what's upstream of us as bidding people, but now you know. Just unpacking that business plan bit. This is a screenshot from the Miro board where I'm working with a client on this. So that's the business plan arrow from the top of that funnel there. So I say this and sound like really confident. I do this with clients all the time. I had a really awkward meeting in December. I have a non-exec that works with me, who was head of the business school at Coventry University. Quite a stern lady, very capable, incredibly intelligent. And she holds me to account. She said, right, Jetta, what's the plan for 2025? This was in December. What's your dream list of clients and what are your plans around those top prospects? And I said, well, yeah, that's what I tell clients to do. And guess what? I haven't done it at all. I've been working with my mates last year. So I did this for my business and it grew 22% this year. Without really trying, to be honest. I've been a bit all over LinkedIn. I'm really sorry. This is difficult to look at, I know. But part of that was you will see all of my messaging on LinkedIn is actually for an audience of about 10 companies, some of which are here today, and probably the total addressable audience I'm actually trying to speak to is about 50 people. And how I've distilled that is some market research to understand where the money's going to be with who, and then I've run that through a couple of lenses, a perfect client lens. So of that big list of 200, I've scored all of them by their behaviours, competition, scale of value that I can add, etc., etc. And so it's given me a top list of clients that are my perfect client. With my clients, like that builder I'm working with, I've got them to look back at all of the projects they've delivered in the last 5 years and which markets and projects and sectors they've made money in and which ones they haven't, and looked at the behaviours of the clients in that, and it's helped them come up with a DNA or an avatar of what a perfect client looks like. So if you put that data through that lens, it reduces the list fairly dramatically because you just shouldn't be working with them. So, for instance, I lost a deal this year, which is thankfully fairly rare for me, with a client. I phoned up that same non-exec and said, oh, I've lost this deal. And she said, Jezza, were they on your dream list? Oh, no, they weren't, no. So why were you talking to them then? So they didn't have the right behaviours, they didn't have the right maturity and understanding. I was trying to sell something to them that they weren't in a place they would understand or buy. So I wasted my time or time I could have spent with my kid. So don't make that mistake. Go after clients and opportunities that fit your perfect client avatar and that fit your project or contract sweet spot. So that will reduce the list, geography, size, scale, complexity, and then your capacity to deliver. So I was talking to an old friend who's quite senior at a construction business just earlier on, who they only bid stuff where they've got teams and capacity to deliver it. Funnily enough, that helps you be successful. not rocket science. Really. So if you can inform your business plan, you'll be a lot more successful. So that can be re-spun on this kind of horizon. I work on with my clients around setting their business plan, their vision and business plan. Just done some vision stuff with some friends of mine. And then so strategically, you want your business plan to be on a 3 to 5 year horizon and reviewed annually. And then as a subset of that, and I do mean hardwired to it, you should have a marketing plan which is solely focused on the client's prospects and opportunities that are in that pipeline and business plan, nothing else. So otherwise you're just wasting ROI. So our ability to work with our marketing brothers and sisters on this is something we'll come to, but very critical. You have sector and account plans for those key accounts and sectors, and then capture the rolling on a 1 to 2 year horizon, and then operationally you're farming, mobilising, etc., etc. So all businesses should really be a pyramid scheme. All of it should be linked through. So you shouldn't be marketing to anyone or any audience that's not in your business plan and the target. You shouldn't be going after clients that aren't in that business plan or target unless there's a very good reason if something greenfield comes around. Well, that happens a lot less than you think. Does that make sense? Cool. So the things that we know to be true. So these are the DNA of what we find good work winning has. So whether it's in your key account phase, capture of key pursuits, or whether it's in the bid phase, we've all worked on a bid, right, where we didn't have good sponsorship, where the senior people in your business weren't that bothered about the opportunity. It came out of bronze in your bid, no bid, or whatever. It's horrible in one of those bids, isn't it? Because nobody gives their best. People don't turn up to meetings really, they haven't read the stuff. Whereas what we find when you've got good sponsorship is that magically the right resources appear, or you get the right budget. You get what we call top-down and bottom-up energy. So top-down, if people on the board in particular are aware of a key pursuit, a capture pursuit or bid, magically the best athletes suddenly appear to work on that bid and they turn up to sponsor the activity. Whereas if you don't have that, it's difficult. But you also have bottom-up energy. So there's like an army of kids from Mace here today. When I was at Mace, we always knew when one of the board members was sponsoring an activity because half of the marketing would turn up. We bid for the Google job that's still being built next to King's Cross Station, and there was about 20 of them turned up to a kick-off meeting on the bid. And they were all wearing hoodies and Converse because they thought we were going to be writing to actual Googlers. So it's interesting, you get a tailwind. The younger people in your business recognise that there's some limelight to be had consciously or subconsciously. So that's important. Successful bid functions get their business to focus relentlessly on value for clients. And so I tend to say there's no point putting proposition to a client on sustainability if their first name is Shink, because they probably don't care. It's what does this client value that we can deliver, and how are we going to turn the volume up on that? If you could save the client £1 million more than anyone else, it won't matter how well your bid is written, I'm afraid, as long as it's compliant, you'll probably win. As long as they know it and you can evidence it and they believe you, they'll find a way to give you the points. It's just kind of life, really. So whether that's how we focus on generating increased value for current clients if we can, whether it's we focus on co-solution with clients through the capture, our high-performing bid functions are tending to really focus relentlessly on client value, and they tend to win. This has become a bigger deal since the pandemic, interestingly. I was talking to someone over a coffee before about this, that the humans you are writing bids to are more clued in than before, that the performance of your people, not your business, the actual team you're putting forward, will impact their scorecard for their appraisal at the end of the year, positively or negatively. They desperately want to meet and understand and build trust with your humans far before a tender is ever submitted. If they don't open your bid, as I said, and recognise the CV straight away, just keeping top marks to move on, you're probably going to struggle, because that's what your competition are doing, is getting your key delivery people out in front of pursuits far before tender. Data and insight, again, high-performing businesses generally and bid functions, you'll pick up the clue, should be at the heart of this. are generating much greater data and insight and MI on pipeline and performance against that pipeline, win-loss, analysis of all of that, and analysis of the clients where we make money, where we don't make money, etc., etc. Fundamentally, we need to really drive our businesses to focus on clarity of pipeline in particular. It should be easier than ever, as I said, because that is what your board can invest in. So if they can see further out the opportunities that are coming, and they can have greater and greater confidence in your ability to convert those, they can then invest in people and innovation and drive the business forward, which will help you come up with more valuable solutions, and therefore you'll win more deals. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If they're dealing with stuff here, they can't invest, they can't see where it's going. So it's super important that we give businesses, our leaders, the greatest clarity that we can. So fundamentally, high-performing bid teams know that if you send some of your stakeholders, client-facing people, bid leaders, bid directors or whatever, to a bidders conference like this, you've got to still get bidders conferences like this, largely team schools, I guess, these days, right? So, you know, the classic thing is a half-hour meeting, client stands at the front, talks about themselves for 20 minutes, really boring stuff no one cares about, and then for 10 minutes they actually tell you about the tender and what you're interested in, what it's going to look like, how it's going to work. If you don't know what that person's going to say before they say it, somebody else in that room absolutely does, and you're kidding yourself if you think anything different. It is incredibly rare that anyone pumps a tender out cold to the market. They're going to have tested their thinking with someone, whether it's someone they used to work with, they went to university with, consultants, but particularly incumbents. They're going to have tested their thinking with someone. And so we as a big team need to act in that regard. We need to drive our businesses to understand that fact and get ahead of things. So we run maturity benchmarking workshops with our clients as the kind of first step, a diagnostic to understand how mature they are. So I normally charge people most of them seem to have money for this, but you're going to get it for free. So congratulations. Although slightly more quickly, I was going to flog it to one or two people in the room. So this is unfortunate. I have to pay for my own nice new shoes. But in all seriousness, you need the workshop really to run through this in detail. But basically, the exercise, we run a workshop for 2.5 hours via Teams or in person, tends to be better in person, where we work through those arrows from that funnel that I showed you. And we have a series of descriptors here. So improvement required, bad. Push for excellence is all right. And then high performance is obviously high performance. The point here, most organisations are fairly mature. It's a bit of context actually. By the virtue that you guys have turned up today, you're probably in the top 20% of performance of all B2B, B2G businesses. Partly because your business employs some bidding pros, so that means you're already more mature than most, because most businesses don't even do that. They've got admin people crashing documents together. But by the virtue of you're looking for development, networking, etc., that probably puts you even higher up the list. So when I do this exercise, I do have to say to people, don't beat yourself up, because most businesses are in the left or middle column. Very rarely are they ever in the right-hand column, although I have had one recently that was a particularly high performer. So basically, we facilitate a workshop where we talk through where they stand against these kind of descriptors. But I just thought, you know, there's some stuff that's quite far up the funnel from you guys, mostly in the room as bidding folk. But it is interesting that, you know, high-performing businesses do have a real business plan that is much more than just the numbers in a spreadsheet. Target revenue by sector or geography. It's got a combination of data behind it, including some proper market research and trends. So I have asked for a business plan from a FTSE listed business before, and they've sent me a spreadsheet. It's got 4 numbers in it, turnover per sector it was. And I said, where do those numbers come from? And they said, it's last year's numbers plus 10%. Right. And where did you get 10% from? And that firm has about 10,000 staff. So, you know, it's not unusual that people don't do a great job of this. If we want to become the engine room of growth in the business, which I would try and advocate for you to become, I would try and influence the business to do an ever better job of this. And if you're doing public sector stuff, like I say, the data's there really. for us to mine. But critically as well, what I seldom find is the metrics from that business plan are baked into people's scorecards. So I'm working with a contractor at the moment where I've had to break it to them. If they wanted to give everyone the top 10% of performers a bonus, or if they wanted to make the top 10% of the bottom 10% of performers redundant, they don't actually have any data to demonstrate who's who. They haven't really got any data in terms of performance management. What we find is carrot and stick. You want the carrot in terms of vision and excitement, but you do need the stick of baked into people's scorecards, their accountabilities and performance against those. So I would certainly advocate for you and your bid team, create your bid process if you haven't got one. I suggest you do. Be very clear on the roles and responsibilities, but bake those responsibilities into people's role descriptions, hardwired, and measure their performance against it. You'll naturally find out the bottom 20% performers, you'll recognise the top 10%, you'll be able to develop the people in the middle. So high performing teams do that. The thorny subject of marketing. So I'm allowed to say these things because I'm married one of them. So I saw any marketers here, apart from the Altura one. Closure is. So the problem with marketing, I did a podcast on this a couple of years ago with a guy called Darren Carter at Morgan Sindall. Marketeers, as part of their studies, are all taught about B2C stuff, not B2B, B2G stuff, largely. The case studies are Apple and Coca-Cola and stuff. Our businesses are wildly different to that. Your total addressable audience for your business, you could probably count on your fingers and toes, or maybe it's 100 people at absolute max. We're not selling iPhones to thousands of people. So your constant social media posts about topping out ceremonies or so and so joined the business, no one cares, I'm afraid. What we do want is to get your key delivery people that will turn up as a CV and a bid in front of the clients, sitting next to them at a brown table breakfast event 6 months before the bid comes out, making friends, co-solutioning. And so I do interestingly find bid functions that report through marketing aren't as high performing as ones that don't on average. It's just an interesting thing, that observation. I can't substantiate it, I just made that up, but it's fairly true. So I would say one of the key things we did at Mace, and which Mace are very good at actually, for instance, and Arcadis as well, is there is a really good, strong relationship and linkage between marketing and bids. And our marketing function is pushing out thought leadership, driving events that will engage the audience that will eventually receive a bid. There are on average 5 people who will read and score every bid you ever submit. Who are those 5 people for your bids next year and the year after? How are we going to engage them through your marketing? So if you can get them ahead of that, you'll be much more successful rather than the general background noise stuff. In terms of sector and account plans, obviously the top performers have sector leaders that are seen as a thought leader in their market. Case in point, if you Google Mark Farmer, the one I used to work with, seen as a top leading light in the residential market, wrote a report for government on how to build residential projects. That's positioning his business as the rock stars in that space. If we can get our key humans out in the market with their personal brands, you'll be successful. But certainly, key account-wise, we need sponsors and key leaders for key accounts, with teams around them playing as a team, and perhaps performance management of that, a league table of your key accounts, measuring some KPIs like the client's net promoter score, feedback survey score. Last time that you talked them through your performance and lessons learned, demonstrating times of that, happiness of your people working with the client well-being, whatever it might be. But if you track that performance, you'll be more successful. Pipeline-wise, obviously, things have moved on quite a lot in this space. Hopefully, you have a CRM platform that's used for more than just pipeline, and you're looking at that data and doing something about it, not just waiting for bids to slap you in the face. And there's key sponsorship of that pipeline and the decisions that you make around that. And just panting on because I'm conscious of time, but capture-wise, anyone got capture teams? Ish, not really. So, yeah, in terms of what capture is, because I've made an assumption that people know what that means. So a capture plan is a plan for a single campaign to win a single deal with a client. Big framework we bid, big project with a client on a year to 18-month horizon. So what is our campaign to influence that client, help shape their solution, their specification, and ideally shape it for a negotiation, worst case, it being a tender. So the APMP school of thought, for people who are interested, weirdly with APMP, the body of knowledge is actually stronger for capture than it is bid writing. There's some really good gear in there. But it was, you have to bear in mind, it was written by some bid writing folk as a kind of wish list of what they wished had happened before the tender landed. So it doesn't have much focus on co-solutioning and procurement shaping because they wouldn't have been involved in that. Because we would want to see that. So, you know, are we using proactive proposals to engage clients, little white papers to engage them, get a workshop, co-solutioning, go on the journey? Are we zippering our relationships? You know, are we aware and have we shaped the client specification and design way before any tender comes out? And then obviously bid decision wise, we've got some good qualification going on. We're only bidding where we've influenced, shaped it, where we know their people, and ideally we've got a decent proportion of negotiated business, 20% plus is what high performing teams would have. So the bidding bit. Almost any time. So what high performing bid processes and functions have is that you're working on deals that you've actively shaped, so you're moving up the value chain, so you're not just cheapest, not winning on price. We should comfortably win on quality and be most expensive, but create the most value for the client that they value. But critically, what we should look for and try and drive is engagement of our leaders, that sponsorship of this activity. If we can get your leaders leading from the front. So that I saw a post by Darryl Wood with my friend the other day about 3 different types of people that are rubbish to work with on bids. One of them is what I call, I think he called it something else, but senior terrorists. People who turn up towards the end and shit on all of your work and rent review. That's actually, we all sort of laugh at it, it's actually really super dangerous because the young people on your bids early in their careers, if someone senior in a rent review says that their content's shit, guess what? They won't want to work with you guys again. And you won't get your best athletes on bids in the future. So it's important we create an upward spiral of enthusiasm around bidding, not just with you guys, but your stakeholders. So it's super important that we engage our leaders and get them excited about winning work, engaging early. And of course, I could say some leadership development modules for that. Introduce me to your leaders, I'll fix it for you. So our technical contributors, the people that we work with, are subject matter experts, SMEs, someone called them. There should be a real team spirit with them. Our high performing big teams are super engaged with them, have their trust, have each other's back. You know, so our SMEs are really actively seeking to understand how they can help us create value. You know, we know what that feels like. But particularly for you guys, I guess the key thing for today, could have done without unpacking it a bit more, but when I was at EC Harris as a kid, I knew that I was winning. There was a guy called Terry Povell who was head of water, and he came up to me one day and he said, "Yes, I've got this key rebid with Welsh Water, key client bars. It's a year away from tender. What would you do in terms of that pursuit?" And I knew I was winning. If you get senior people in particular coming to you as the proposals people, asking for your advice as their trusted advisor in how to win deals, that's when you know you're really winning. And so we need to get our people to a place where they're engaging our leaders and our key technical delivery leads, building trust with them, going on the journey with them. In time, you'll get to a place where we're doing this kind of great job of being creative, entrepreneurial, etc. So, get to Q&A in a second. Some real nuts and bolts stuff, because we'll have a mixed audience in the room. Clearly, very clear roles and responsibilities on bids should be a given. You haven't got time to have any areas of grey or lack of clarity. We need to have absolute understanding of who's doing what by when, who's accountable for what in your team and with your stakeholders. We need a nice balanced flow of activity. We teach this in our bid writing course. around 20. It's utopia, but 25, 50, 25% plan, 50% execute, 25% review, safely submit. That's what the bid toolkit is kind of based on. I recognise you can get bent out of shape and it won't quite work like that, but if you shoot for it, you'll be much more successful. And then last bit, I think really, I tend to find that high-performing bid functions have a real entrepreneurial spirit. I was talking, I had a team school earlier on actually with a new business director at a big turnover business, a big corporate, and it was quite interesting comparing him with his counterparts in the business and other businesses. But as the person who the bid team reports to, he barely really spends much time with them on nuts and bolts stuff. His focus is on the forward pipeline strategy and engaging the board of the business on future resourcing and innovation where the market's going. He's got a real, I'd class of it as an entrepreneurial spirit. If you particularly head to the bids, if we can all move in a direction where we're the centre of entrepreneurship for the business, because that's where the bids are where the cutting edge of business happens. You're where winning and losing happens, where client engagement happens. So if we can really drive the business to get ahead of things, be entrepreneurial, we'll be much more successful. So I was going to do a bit on just getting your questions ready if you've got any Q&A. So clearly, I have to put this slide into my bid writing course because AI moves so fast. There's no point in me putting a detailed slide in because it moves all the time. I would just say that high-performing bid teams have realised that it ain't just about writing. When people think AI, they think Copilot or similar, and it's about getting your word count down or helping you, at best, helping you storyboard stuff. When actually, interestingly, if you put into Copilot what a bid team's using AI for, it comes back with a whole list of quite interesting stuff. I did it the other day. They're using it to understand their performance data. They're using it to research clients and communities and all of that kind of social value stuff that we do. They're using it for data analytics of win rates and what reasons why we won or lost things, mining your own files. And so there's a whole world with AI. Obviously, we've got our Altura colleagues here today that can tell you about AI bid platforms, etc. But it's much bigger than just the writing stuff. I mean, for you, just please, please, please don't let anyone in your business just put stuff in ChatGPT. I had a really awkward moment the other week where one of my clients, someone in their business, had put a whole bid in ChatGPT to reduce the character count, and one of their competitors found it, and it had some client security stuff in it. Big no-no. A friend of mine, Alison Smith's head of bids at Foster and Partners, they have it in their contracts of employment. If you use a publicly available AI platform for anything, it's gross misconduct and you're fired. Because it's the IP of the business, so please, obviously, don't let people do that stuff. So I'll hand on a little bit, just last little couple of bits before we do sort of 10 minutes, 15 minutes Q&A. So back when I was at Mace, I took my team on a bit of a high-performing teams journey, which was a bit of a mixed bag and a bit of a challenge, actually. But there was some useful stuff in there, I think, for teams. And like I say, we'll send you the slide deck so you can look at this stuff and obviously sticking in ChatGPT or whatever. But I just thought it was interesting in terms of the journey that teams go on, in terms of their formation and where you get to what high performance looks like. Because we can find our teams of bidding people can be quite disparate. We're all working on different bids, focus on our different markets or things. Actually, we need each other's backs, help with the development of our young people. And so it's just quite interesting, I thought, the kind of DNA of where we are with high performance in terms of the challenge that we provide to people, in terms of the interaction of members of those teams and how they're really bought into each other's growth. So Al Gilbert, for instance, my friend at Mace, who sadly passed away, actually a massive loss recently, he was particularly fantastic at that, along with Jack Sheridan that I used to work with, and got his people really around him in that regard. But having a common purpose, a vision for your team, really key accountability back to that performance environment, you'll be much more successful. So hopefully that makes sense for you. So have you got any questions, any Q&A, any observations on what we've been through there? Awkward silence. stunned silence. Yes, sir.
So you correctly point out that actually there's a lot of work that's not worth winning. Obviously, the best thing you can do is not bid for that work, right? So that it kind of portrays the bid no bid decision as a really critical point in the journey.
Yeah.
Have you got any tips or advice about how you could do a better job of bid no bid decisions?
Yes, I think so. Thank you. So it's quite interesting actually. Most businesses, so what we talk about in our bid writing training is that 85% of the reasons why companies lose bids or more actually were known to them before they submitted the bid. They just weren't honest about it. When I go back and do inquests into bids that were lost, you'll find that in their strategy stuff, if they did it at all, there's a massive list of strengths, most of which are generic company guff, and there's a tiny list of weaknesses because they've not really been honest with themselves. Whereas the smart businesses don't just do qualification when the bid's out or about to be out. There's a client of mine that actually fill out the bid no bid form a year before tender. Theirs is quite cyclical, highways maintenance deals and things, and it will score quite low. What that gives them is what we can call a pre-mortem. So if the bid came out today, why would we lose it? And then you can go and solve those problems. Because the great bit with capture, so by the way, fully explain, with capture, you will not be able to do capture on every bid the business faces, number one. Number two, if 80% of your margin's coming from 20% of your clients, you should deploy capture in the same kind of thinking. You should deploy capture on the next deal with a key client rather than new business with a new client. However, as a key sort of stepping stone in capture for your key pursuits, certainly, you should ask yourself, you've run it through your bid no bid now, it will score quite low, but it will give you where the gaps are. And then this conversation isn't about does it pass bid no bid, it's do we close the gaps. So we haven't got the right project director, go and hire one. Client likes that technology platform, not our one, go and influence them or get that technology platform. So the great thing with capture is don't wait for the bid to come out. You can go and fix stuff, develop stuff, co-solution stuff with the client. So that's the key bit in qualification. So we'll need to qualify all opportunities quite hard. I guess the other aspect is the data that comes out of that. Very often companies will qualify bid things or not bid things and then forget about that and never look back. When you win or lose, should you bid it or not? So the ones you lose, did you know you were going to lose? And you still bid it anyway, because you'll find that leaders, because none of your leaders have ever been shown this funnel before, probably a very small proportion actually get what the funnel of your business looks like. So they are, everybody's proud of the businesses they work for, they should be, everybody's competitive. So they'll naturally have optimism bias and wants to bid things. And we as a bid function, frankly, need to bring it out of them with data. So just show them constantly, well, we didn't win that one last time, we didn't win that type of opportunity last time because of this. What are we going to do to close that gap? So if the data and insight will provide the gateway for that. But I would qualify way before the bid comes out and then re-qualify as it comes out. So it's about gap analysis, not about whether you should bid or not so much. Any more? Yes, sir.
Just to build on that, after the bid no bid decision and moving to the approval to release, you might be going to that bid no bid with an 80% assurance. You know, if we have 100% assurance, we're going to win it. We have the technology, the people, the client relationship, happy days. But if there's that sort of, using the phrase there, principle, that 20% that in the bid we need to do intelligent stuff with intelligent teams, and that promise isn't sort of qualified through that bid process, how do you get around the sunken cost fallacy of, you know, well, we're halfway through the bid, we've already spent this money, but now we're sure we're not going to win it. Often bid teams will be forced to sort of spend the other 50% of the bid budget to end up at a sign where you're not really, you're not, because the technology's not quite there. The R&D team haven't quite got to a position.
So it's very tricky, isn't it? Because we're not the decision makers, we're facilitators. Very rarely does anyone in a bid team have actual decision making say to switch something off. So all we can really do is influence and just play the data back constantly that actually we knew we were going to lose that one and this one and this one, and just do a bit of an annual report. I would probably do a report every 6 months to whoever the bid team reports through on what's gone well, what's not gone so well, lessons learned. So I would bake into that some data that is root cause stuff. But in reality, we should be teaching our leaders that there's never a bad time to not bid something. You should stop, because those humans, there's an opportunity cost in their time and effort. They could be working on capture as something else rather than working on that bid you're always going to lose. And businesses don't, because they generally don't account for cost of sale effectively. It's quite funny actually, the reaction I get from some chief execs when I've worked with the accountants to figure out their true cost of sale. I've got a client that's 80 million turnover and they were spending £2.8 billion a year bidding stuff on a 15% win rate. And the chief exec didn't know their partners all over the country holding bidding stuff all over the place. That is money. If I improved his win rate, double their win rate, 1.4 million quid in his pocket. So these things are actually quite material if you can get the data and account for it effectively. Weirdly, a lot of leaders don't naturally like to do that because they like to be able to take a punt and because they're a bit competitive, all that sort of stuff. So just keep showing them the data doesn't lie, and then they can make decisions. But without it, they can keep running away. So, any more from anyone? Everybody's happy, a bit warm, isn't it? So thank you very much for coming along. I've really appreciated such a decent crowd actually. It's given me some confidence in things. So in terms of summary, so data is everything, play that back to the business, engage your stakeholders, particularly senior ones, get their sponsorship in this, try and teach them this stuff, point them to my content, get them to do a maturity session with me, and we'll change the game for you, because frankly it's not that difficult if we just show them the data and the art of the possible. Very often some of you might be working for truly high performing businesses, but quite often there's some improvement that you can make. So in terms of free stuff, so some of you might be aware, because you follow me on LinkedIn and I have to look at this all the time. But we have the big toolkit which is free for you to look at, the process content. I've got the biggest podcast in the world in this stuff because there aren't any others. So you can listen to that, get really enthusiastic. This will go out on my YouTube and via the podcast, so you'll be able to point people to this content. We do free webinars and drop-in calls, so if you join my email list, you get free introductions to those. So we do 2 emails a week. Tuesday is sort of newsletter, what we're up to. Friday is a blog post based on whatever the video is that I did on Tuesday, top tips, etc. This week's was leadership, I think. We've got a free LinkedIn group. I'll get a link sent to you. You're welcome to join. We'll share content in, and then you'll get those email updates. And then of course I would love to bribe you, and so if you could do LinkedIn recommendations, if we work together, if you do a LinkedIn post about your experience today, we'll put you in a prize draw for a 500 quid Amazon voucher and send you our free toolkit from the big toolkit. There's templates for big plans and CVs and that sort of stuff. And if you refer me into a corporate where we win some actual training work, I'll bundle you 200 quid as a voucher, or we can do it as a charity donation. If you feel a bit grumpy about that, I won't tell anyone if you don't. So we've done the questions here. Just thank you very much to Altura again for hosting us, giving the free lunch and the space. It's quite nice actually. I was expecting them to want me to point people out for them to target and drop stuff to, but actually, it's what I would have done. They won't give me the data to target. But actually, it is about community building. It's a genuine thing. So that's quite nice, because often you come to these things and someone's trying to flog you something hard. So thank you very much, guys, for hosting us. Have a great rest of the afternoon. I think you've got another half an hour or so, more free sandwiches, coffee, etc., a bit of networking. And we'll see you again next time. Maybe we'll do more of this stuff, which will be great. Thank you very much.